Greetings and love, comrades. I want to welcome you all to the official first episode of B.L.E.E.K POV. So once we hear that intro, The Power of Anger by Alphonse Joseph, we're going to get into it. Here we go.
Spitting in the face of a reckless stranger, overcame the dangers of the 36 chambers. Pray to the Savior, cause nothing can save you. Scarred your DNA with the power of anger, ignoring the pain and destroying every roadblock. Ramming the gates of heaven with Satan in a headlock. Bodies will drop, battered and shell shock, burn within the flames of a wrath that won't stop.
So, how did I get into comic books? Well, let's just say my origin story with comic books wasn't such a good one. So I'm based in Louisiana. I grew up in East Feliciana Parish in this little small town called Norwood. It's about 45 miles north of Baton Rouge. And basically what we call the country. I say I was about maybe 3 or 4 years old, and that's when I discovered what I would later begin to understand would be comic books. My dear Uncle Elliot, he went to the military. He is a big comic book collector. So I started seeing some of his comic books lying around the house. And let's just say I destroyed them until I fully understood what they were, which didn't actually take that long. But I do remember my uncle being furious, and I would be so, because I probably ruined a lot of gems. I remember seeing a lot of Superman comics, I believe some Batman, Spider-Man, and some obscure ones like called Hot Stuff. My uncle came. Thankfully, he got his stash and took it back to California with him. But I was able to keep one, and it's Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, issue 9, which this series would later become simply the Spectacular Spider-Man. And from what this cover says, first time ever in a color comic, Marvel's most controversial creation. And this also features the White Tiger. White Tiger, if I'm not mistaken, and I haven't read this comic since I was a kid, and I believe White Tiger is actually a Puerto Rican character, a Puerto Rican and black character, if I'm not mistaken. But this is actually a powerful cover, man, because it shows a lot of people of color on this cover as protesters, and it says "No retreat, action not talk." And this comic actually was released in 1977. So I'm pretty sure Marvel was picking up, as they always do, stories that reflected the surroundings and reflected the times. That's why Marvel Comics is so grounded. But I was able to save this for Uncle Elliot, and it's hanging up on our wall. I started officially collecting comic books actually in 1992. I mean, I was getting stuff here and there like Ninja Turtle comic books from that was produced by Archie Comics, but that's only because Ninja Turtles was my first obsession. The cartoons, the toys, so I wanted anything Ninja Turtles. So it wasn't a thing of me collecting comic books. I was just getting something that had a property on it that I was obsessed with, and that was Ninja Turtles. I remember going to a Walmart with my mother, and I was walking around a toy section, and I saw this comic book, X-Men #1. This is like my very first X-Men comic ever. And yeah, it's still precious to me, but I have multiple copies. It represents an awesome era of comic books, especially with me, because I was born in the 80s and I grew up in the 90s. And this was pretty much my childhood. And I was also buying stuff from DC. I remember this was a Christmas gift from my mom, The Death of Superman. It collected all of the issues that led into Superman being killed. Very compelling story to this day. Yeah. So I might even read this again, this trade. Remember getting Batman, and this is Batman number 500, doing the Nightfall, part 19 in the Nightfall crossover is when, after, you know, Bane broke Batman's back and somebody else took up the mantle. That was, I believe, the character Azrael. So then, you know, I also got Image Comics. Spawn number 1, Cyberforce number 3, but my first official Image comic actually was Wildcats, and it was drawn by Jim Lee, because Jim Lee had just left Marvel for the newly formed creator-owned Image Comics. We'll get into that history at another time. But yeah, comic books play a big role into who I am. I love going to the comic book store every Wednesday. I love the fact that we were able to produce an art form of something that's like one of the most important things to me. Well, you know, we call it hobbies, but for me, comic book collecting is a lifestyle. I don't have any rare jewels in my comic book collection, other than my own. When we get rich, me and my wife win. I guess one of those eccentric things that I'll buy is I'm gonna look for the original Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, X-Men number 1. Did I collect any black comic books? Well, growing up, I wasn't really exposed to black comic books. I knew they had black characters, and I remember when Spawn came out, it was like a big deal because the main character was black. Shadowhawk, you know, when, spoiler alert, the character was revealed to be a black man, his secret identity. I would learn about Static Shock, but from the animation, and don't hit me, I wasn't a fan of the animation. But I do respect this legendary status. But I would see Milestone comics, but I didn't have an understanding of what Milestone was and the huge importance of Milestone comics until later on in life, when I started to do more knowledge of self and learning more black and African histories, and started becoming obsessed with learning my history, started becoming obsessed with learning about many of the folklores, the for lack of better terms, mythologies, beliefs, different politics. And so yeah, so X-Men was my first introduction into something that reflected my life as a black man, as a black kid, and as especially the life of my grandmother and my mother. Because let's say, man, X-Men was created in 1963. My mom was still a kid. X-Men reflected more of what they faced every day. That's why that comic book means so much to me, but that's just one example of many. If you're interested in taking this journey with me, please subscribe to this channel, hit that like button, and share this vid so others can view it. You can also hit that bell to be notified every time I post up a video. But until then, solidarity and compassion. Bless. Selah.
Architect of the ancients, I ain't the one to play with. Travel to see the stars in government spaceships through a time warp to change some of the past. Taking the side mission to lyrically murk your ass. So don't get it twisted. I love Star Wars and giant robots to transform into fast cars. I'm fracturing loose jaws, crafting these dope balls. A cool anti-hero, survivors from close calls. Alphonse Joseph.